I'm Natalie, Managing Director of Found, the digital marketing agency that help brands get found online. I'm super excited today because this is our first Found Table where we're going to be discussing all things Black Friday. So I am joined by two of our digital marketing experts who I will hand over to now to give some introductions. So over to you, James.
Thanks a lot, Nat. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm James. I'm head of Biddable at Found. I deal with paid search, paid social, and display. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here and talk about Black Friday. So pass over to you, Kim.
Thanks, James. So my name's Kim. I'm an account director here at Found, predominantly working on the paid search side of things, but do dabble from time to time in paid social. And yeah, likewise, looking forward to talking all things Black Friday.
It's crazy that we're already
having to think about it. Key period is upon us. Yeah. So let's get straight to it. And I think Black Friday is such a key period in the retail calendar that brands kind of plan so much for. What are the key aspects that brands need to do in order to really stand out from the crowd in what can only really be described as an oversaturated kind of marketplace? So what would your advice be to brands to really kind of have that dominance and stand out?
I'll go first. I'll kick us off from this. So from a Black Friday point of view, a lot of the conversations that we have with clients are exactly like that. It's kind of, what can we do to make sure we get absolute dominance, to make sure that we have this massive effect? And I think that they forget about the stuff that is really, really important to ultimately delivering the returns that they want. We have to dial back the excitement, and this does extend to the day, but I'm sure we'll touch on the day a bit later on. And the first thing we say is that you need to be focusing on the foundations. You need to make sure that the net at the bottom of all this digital market activity is functioning as well as it possibly can. And that means things like search, it means things like shopping, it means things like Performance Max, the scary new world of Performance Max, are all set up to deliver the absolute best that they possibly can, so that you're going in there and you give yourself the best chance to succeed.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of understated, and potentially people kind of don't plan as much, but it is really around the preparation and being as prepared as possible, really now getting those campaigns in line, the creatives in line, because we all know that can kind of sometimes be a stumbling block within it. Just making sure you're fully prepped, kind of when the deadlines or when the launch plans are for certain campaigns. It just makes the whole time, that whole month that is Black Friday, just so much more seamless and easier for everyone involved, both on the client side and on the agency side, if you've done the hard work and the legwork kind of a couple months beforehand.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the key part. I know that what I say maybe sounds a bit boring as a statement, but it is about preparation. We know that for the clients that we have, for example, we've got those foundations in place that ensure that they will get the most out of their Black Friday, but then it's about making sure that you look at it and you don't start the week before Black Friday and go, we need to get everything in place straight away. It needs to happen and it's going to be great, because sadly it won't be. You need to be looking at it and going, okay, we've got those foundations set up. How are we going to drive more volume? We need to then be considering audiences. We need to be considering creative, what messaging, what campaign, how we're going to build people up, and then also how we're going to deal with people that have been hit by that activity from a retargeting point of view, to make sure that they're taken on a journey, or as close to a journey as we can get, that leads towards a conversion and potentially a couple of conversions as we move into.
Yeah, I think audiences are key as well, because now more than ever, ad depth is increasing across like the majority of verticals. CPCs are increasing, and really what can make you stand out, or what can make the difference, is the audiences that either you leverage or that you have, whether that be CRM data that you upload. That's really key, and trying to leverage that to help your campaigns go further, but then also all the work that you've done throughout the whole year, to be honest, leading up to this pinnacle peak point. It should really be leveraged.
So great answers, by the way, guys. Just taking that all in, yeah. And I want to dive into the timings of Black Friday, because Black Friday, a couple of years ago would just be that week, and then people would go crazy. It would be that day, wouldn't it? But now we're seeing Black Friday spanning over a whole month. How do you advise brands need to adapt their strategies? Is there different channels that brands need to be thinking about during this key period to build that awareness side of things? And then what would you actually advise in terms of going live with that Black Friday messaging, and then obviously transitioning over to Cyber Monday?
Definitely, I think there's a mixture of kind of opportunities and strategies that you can go with. There's definitely kind of that element of first mover advantage with Black Friday. I know last year for a number of our retailer clients, it really started when Amazon went quite early. I think they went in like the penultimate week of October or last week of October, which is, yeah, as you said, it used to be beginning just the day in November. Yeah. Now it's like a month and a half before. Yeah, it's up to you in terms of kind of what budget you have available as well. I would also say don't be afraid to try platforms like YouTube or whether that be social as well. Again, to build up those audiences that are really going to help you benefit from cheaper CPCs, more engaged audiences that would have a higher likelihood of converting. Yeah, lots to consider.
I think it's an interesting point. Alongside Performance Max, the ever growing presence of TikTok is another mention that I think is worth saying, because the cost that you're able to, the amount of traffic, the amount of interactions that you're able to get from there is better than Facebook. And it's worth making sure that you take the risk a bit earlier on, as opposed to during that peak time, grow the audience, have a new area of people that you can go after. We know that the demographic is, it's actually getting a bit older from TikTok side of it, but it's a different audience of people, different type of way of using the platform, and it just expands your reach as a brand.
Yeah. And post-pandemic, we've seen that year-on-year trends are super difficult to kind of make any insights off the back of. Do you think this year Black Friday is going to take off in the same way that it did last year? And do you still see it as that key period of really getting those sales? I know that for a lot of brands, for their bottom line, they rely so heavily on that one weekend. Do you still think that is the case, or do you think we're going to see slightly different trends this year?
I'm going to jump in here because even though I know that you've got an excellent answer, because I was talking to you about this the other day. It's not about that single day and single weekends. I know we sort of touched on it a second ago about what is the duration. When I first started in this, it was one day, and you had those pictures of people sprinting through supermarkets and tackling people for TVs, and everyone got very excited. But now the biggest risk that you have is that from a single day, people get overexcited. And what you're best off doing is looking at it as a longer period and treating it in a way that as if there's going to be higher volume, but that proportionally there's going to be higher competition. If you spend a big amount of your budget on that one day and you get a lower ROAS than you might do normally, or CPA, you've not spent it well, because there's so much opportunity across that period. And I know that this isn't a complete answer to the question that you actually asked, but the overall view with Black Friday is that, yes, I think that this year is still going to be significant. Last year, the year before that, the COVID scenario made it very difficult to judge. And we have seen in general a bit of a pattern that's a little more like 2019, but it's also not totally consistent from that side of it. We're seeing different weekly patterns. We're seeing all sorts of change there, but I do think the volume's going to come around that point. I just think it's going to continue to get longer and longer, and with that becomes a more watered down peak, but greater opportunity across the board if you spend it well.
Yeah, and I think with the kind of cost of living crisis, I think it will either, it's a really important kind of factor that you have to consider. It's either going to be in a case of, it will still have that really big impact on Black Friday and going into Cyber Monday, or you'll find that people will start shopping earlier and trying to get kind of gifts in line ahead of Christmas and trying to get that all sorted. So very much the point that we've spoken about, it probably will be extended over a longer period of time, which I guess then kind of begs the question whether clients should start doing promotions earlier, or like incentives for returning customers. As James said, there's kind of lots to play with and lots to consider.
Yeah, I think it has been interesting because pattern overall this year, we actually saw more of a positive move. Things dropped down around March time, but moved up towards April and May. And then we saw a bit of a fall away in line with cost of living and probably more of the media mentioning of it. But things like holidays that people haven't gone away for 2 years, chances to go abroad, certain clients that we have, especially ones that sell swimwear, have done particularly well out of that, off the back of it. But I think people's appetite to have a good time or have something to celebrate, by the time you get to November, your focus is on Christmas. It's on celebrating. It's not about spending in other areas. And I think that switch away, sadly, I think that the heat wave is going to be over by that point. So I do think that people are going to go into it, and they're going to go into it aggressively. And there's a lot of opportunity from that side.
And with all of that opportunity, there are so many different channels now available to advertise on. What channel mix would you recommend for brands to really focus in on and allocate budget to?
So from this side of it, it is a tough question, because I think that the challenge you've got is that each brand, even in our portfolio, which is only a small measure of the amount of businesses that are out there and working towards Black Friday, they've got different challenges, and consequently they need different approaches. For a smaller brand, you want to make sure that you're making the most of the high value, very efficient channels, leaning more towards search and shopping. If you're a bigger brand where you know that you've already got that covered off, then your bigger challenge is going to be trying to make sure that you grow in terms of presence and awareness, and using things like YouTube, using things across social, whether it be TikTok, whether it be Facebook, Instagram Reels, then you need to just try and make sure that you're understanding that and dealing with the value for it. So there's not a one size fits all. You need to adjust the numbers, and you need to take an approach that suits you and your brand.
Yeah, and I think particularly for e-commerce clients, obviously with Performance Max, generally all clients, but particularly for e-commerce, YouTube is integrated as part of that. So it only really, there's a great opportunity and greater position for you now to test that as a channel. Again, to do that early, so you're prepped and ready ahead of Black Friday. To really use that as like an awareness channel, build up those audiences, create that engaged user pool for you to tap into during Black Friday. And to not be scared to invest in that, because there's a reason why it's been pulled into Performance Max. It can deliver results, but you can also use it for that awareness piece as well.
Performance Max. But before we dive into Performance Max, I think the skill set of a biddable specialist is so blurred now. I know that we get a lot of questions around what is the best creative to use for YouTube? What's going to give you the most engagement, and what's going to give you the most traction? What are your kind of top tips that you share with clients?
Good question. Again, it varies depending on kind of the ability that, whether that's the client creating the videos or whether that's something that we do agency side. I think in terms of kind of the key points is definitely to try and have some sort of audio element to your video. I include myself in this, but I think the majority of people, there was a stat I think from Google that around like 60 or 65% of people use YouTube but are browsing and shopping on another tab. So if you're doing that and you have no kind of audio element that kind of you can remember or that helps you recognize or consider the brand later on, you've essentially wasted that impression, lost that potential valuable customer. And just having a simple audio file or music element or jingle, depending if you have one, really does help and does drive much better engagement rates and click-through rates as well. The other key element that I would say, and again, it's not applicable to every client, but it's to definitely have kind of people-led imagery. That tends to be much more emotive, much more engaging, and users can kind of see themselves in the video. And that really does help. But again, that's kind of very much dependent on the capabilities that you have. I know Google obviously launched Google Creative Studio as well to a lot of advertisers. So that's a great platform to really use and can really help lift that weight of trying to create stellar videos to use for YouTube.
I think just on that note of people first, from a video point of view, brands also need to consider about who they are using within the advert, because we have found for a couple of our clients that their target demographic is what they need to go for. Like if they are a brand aimed at younger or older, male or female, they need to try and match that to it, because otherwise they end up alienating their audience and it actually backfires from there. And I think it's also worth mentioning too that YouTube, which has kind of been consistently seen as a B2C focused tool, we have clients that deal in services, and it becomes very difficult to create a tangible, have a model or an actor or anything from those lines. So you need to drive from there and test different aspects. We have stylized videos that are being created by people who have skills beyond what I can even imagine. But there's also different actual ones that have more of a GIF style, and finding different colors, combinations, identities. It all comes into brand and how you want to be perceived from there. And as has been the case from a keyword point of view, it is a test and learn. Like, we need to go through what works for one brand might not work for another. The objectives are also different. Some might be driving action, whereas other ones are just trying to make sure that when the marketing director makes the big decision about who to go for, or sales director makes a decision about who to go for, that brand is familiar and they can sit down and they go, I know them, I've seen them before, I understand what they're doing. And a lot of it is about embedding in your subconscious. Subconscious.
We'll roll with it. I think it's time to talk about Performance Max, guys. I don't even know where to start. So, first year with Performance Max fully rolled out, how are we feeling about that?
Good. I actually think good.
Yeah.
So it got hyped up so much that, we have quite a few conversations with Google where they promise the world and don't always deliver the world. And I think with the increase in the amount of automation that's gone on within the accounts, there's always a fear that you're losing an element of control, and especially, I think, from clients, that lack of visibility, the black box constantly gets referred to from that side. But generally, we've seen really good results. We have, typically, it's about a week or two where it feels like the campaign is not in panic mode, but it's testing a lot of different areas. It has access to all of Google's possible placements. It tests those ones out and it tries to find its path, and then it comes out to the other side and it generally seems to perform a lot better. So at the moment, for the clients that have already moved, for the clients that are currently in the middle of moving, because the deadline for some of them was a couple of days ago, and I know that that's not consistent. I'm not 100% sure why it's not consistent, but we also have ones that are 2 weeks away. So I think it's a positive move. A little bit scary. It makes the audience data that Kim mentioned a bit earlier all the more important, because these are the unique identifiers to your brand, who buys, what that customer looks like. But I think it's a necessary move, and I think it, as a final point, needs to happen as soon as possible if it's not happened already, because the last thing you want to be doing is setting it up or testing it any closer to Black Friday than we already are.
Yeah, you want to have ironed out those kind of peaks and troughs as much as possible. Again, going back to being prepared and doing kind of all the legwork and hard work ahead of Black Friday. And again, I think it's a good opportunity to showcase the value that Discovery, YouTube, display has, because that's all encompassed in this one campaign. Google like to keep us on our toes, and that's exactly what they've done with Performance Max.
They absolutely do, don't they? So as an agency, what is the value that we can add to brands over the Black Friday period?
Yeah. So this is, it shouldn't be a difficult question. It shouldn't be a complex question. But it is something that regularly gets asked. We see clients that are very keen on building out their in-house team. We have clients that are, some of the smaller ones have come over from freelancers, and trying to get your head around where that value position is, especially in an environment that's becoming more and more automated and Google's making everything a lot easier. But ultimately, our value is the same as it has been prior to automation, and that is that we will improve the results that you're going to get, and whether that be sales, whether it be leads, whether it be revenue, whatever the metric is, we'll find a way of improving it. Because although all these areas have come in, whether it be smart bidding and then smart shopping and now in towards Performance Max, it's not perfect. And without direction, it won't deliver the results or the best results that it can possibly do. From a Performance Max point of view, on one side, you can put everything in there and let it go wild and run through. But we've already seen from clients that there's a certain amount of segmentation that delivers the best possible results, whether it be towards the category side, whether it be considering things from margin or price. that's a different setup that we have to go through, and that takes time, that takes like testing in order to get those results. But once you get it right, and once you have a setup that works, you're in a far better place. And our focus, and my focus in particular, when I'm speaking to the most senior people from a client point of view, is they want to know how much profit is going to come out of the back of it. It's all well and good talking about video assets, discovery, paid search, the exciting responsive search ads and different things that are going to come along. But if their numbers don't improve, then they don't stay with us as an agency. And I think the fact that I don't even know what our retention has been for the last year, but it must be
87%.
Well, thanks, Nat.
Yeah.
I guess. We retain these clients because we deliver results, because even though agencies have a fee that goes with it, the returns that have increased as a result more than justify it and set them up from a long-term perspective, because their accountants are in the best possible state that it can be. And equally, as a final point to my very long answer, is that this is phase 27 in terms of automation and tweaks that are going on. But out of how many, we don't know. Like, all we know is that this isn't going to be going away. It's something that's going to continue to advance and improve and develop, and our position within it is likely to change as a result, but our focus is going to be consistent forever. And that is just around driving returns that are tangible to the business. And that's our job, to find out how to use these tools as best as possible in order to deliver results. Yeah,
absolutely. And put skin in the game as well, don't we, James, with the performance-based models that work really well for our clients, because we back ourselves to be able to deliver the numbers that we forecast.
100%, and exceed.
Thank you.
And exceed, don't forget that. So yeah, I mean, it's difficult because I think a lot of people say it. Our biggest challenge in the industry is that as an agency, everybody's going to say that they do an amazing job. Yeah. Everybody's going to say that they transform the revenue. Everybody's going to do it, because why would anybody move if they weren't going to say it? But ultimately, the key parts of it are that we know that we can. We have done for previous clients. Clients stay with us for a long time. Clients grow with us significantly. Yeah. I mean, we've got multiple clients that have doubled and potentially tripled in size since joining us. And a lot of that comes from just understanding the client, understanding the business, and getting the most out of the tools that are available to us. And I know that we've maybe lent a little more towards the Google side of things, but whether it be Microsoft, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, paid social, working with programmatic partners, we're very fluid in terms of the budget, how things move across, and ultimately all we're trying to do is drive those returns.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kim and James. Thanks so much for tuning in to Foundtable. Hope you really liked all of the insights. Make sure you follow Found for all the latest news, and I'm really excited for our next episode. So see you then.